Our video today is going to be on debt and deficit. Deficit is basically the amount of money that your country goes in the red every year in its operations, and debt is the accumulation of that money throughout the years.
We're going to look at different nations and how debt and deficit affect everyone and how they are going to try to solve these problems.
Anybody who ignores the obvious point that if you expend more energy than you bring in, you die, whether you are a business, whether you are a person, or whether you are a country, the person who ignores that is against science. So in the long run, and it may not even be that long from now, a country that spends more than it raises cannot continue.
That's why today I'm pledging to cut the deficit we inherited by half by the end of my first term in office.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in my life, I am ashamed of my country.
Now, do you remember what that number was? Was it 10 trillion? Was it
that? I don't remember what the number was precisely.
Right.
I think it's not just an economic issue. I think it's a moral issue. I think it's frankly not moral for my generation to keep spending massively more than we take in, knowing those burdens are going to be passed on to the next generation. And they're going to be paying the interest and the principal all their lives. And the amount of debt we're adding at $1 trillion a year is simply not moral.
Countries around the world, from the United States to Greece, are implementing strategies to get rid of their debt. Everything from sequestration to austerity packages. Everyone seems to be tightening their belt.
Are these real solutions, or is this just a smoke and mirror effect?
Seriously, man, and here we get worked up over $44 billion. That's the total amount of money that will not be spent that was scheduled to be spent this year. And in truth, we're going to spend more this year than we spent last year. We're just not going to spend as much as was projected. It's all baseline budgeting. There is no real cut. This hit me yesterday. I've said the same things over and over for 25 years. That whether the Clinton presidency or the Obama presidency, whether it's a Pelosi speakership or Tom Foley, who was speaker when I started, it's the same stuff. It's the same threats. It's the same arguments over and over. Nothing ever changes. We just keep spending more money. We create more dependency. We get more and more irresponsible, one crisis to the next, all of them manufactured, except for the real crisis, which nobody ever addresses, and that is we can't afford any of this.
The government now has the authority to dip into private bank accounts of its citizens to steal up to 40% of their money. Yes, socialism on the rise. Could it soon? Is it possible it could reach the shores of America and your bank account? Well, tonight, I guess anything seems possible. Stay with us.
Viewer Dave Nichols, who lives in Okeechobee, Florida, believes that California will be America's Cyprus. And he might be right.
All right, back with my friend Charles Payne on what's going on over there and whether it could ever happen over here. What do you think?
Well, the answer is yes, it could.
Remember the late 80s when Ma and Pa Hemmer tried to get their money out of the SNL? I mean, they were the last ones in the door. The last ones inside the bank.
Scary for everybody there.
It can happen here, too. The entire Eurozone, by the way, is in trouble.
Because people across Europe, and yes, even here in the U.S., are starting to worry that if we don't get our own accounts in order and our own fiscal situation in order, desperate measures will be taken in other countries, including possibly someday here in the United States.
Job cuts and another $4 billion in spending cuts. Will that be enough to bring the private sector around so we get at least a 50% haircut on the private sector side so we can actually close the chapter entirely on the Greek debt problem?
Yes, definitely. Yes. I think this will close the chapter and uncertainty will be removed. So the prospect of recovery will be present again.
As you can see, people around the world, from our shores all the way to China, are affected by this real problem.
And as the rising generation, we need to learn about this so that we can implement real solutions to this real problem now.